My name is Chris Hill. Welcome to this Global Diplomacy Dialogue for August, put on by International Focus. My name is Chris Hill. I work at the UNC Hussman School of Journalism and Media in Chapel Hill, North Carolina, and I am going to be co-hosting this event with, let me try and get the name right, Wojciech Cegielski. Okay, who's joined us from Poland. We're very excited about the speakers we've got today and the program we've got today. A couple of housekeeping things. Please, if you have any questions, you can pop them in the chat and we will have time for questions at the end of the session. We'll leave some time for that. But in the meantime, please enjoy this wonderful session of learning about the media and what's going on in different countries around Europe. I have worked in the Hussman School of Journalism and Media for just over 2 years now. We work with International Focus when groups of journalists or other people who work in the media come to North Carolina. We host them and show what's going on. And unfortunately, we haven't been able to do that for a while due to COVID, but we're looking forward to getting back to it and to be hosting more people. I will now introduce Wojciech, the co-host, and let him introduce himself, and then we'll get the other the panelists to introduce themselves as well. Wojciech.
Hello, good evening, good morning, or good afternoon, depends on time zone you are just in. My name is Wojciech Cegielski, as Chris already told you. And I'm the foreign news correspondent for the Polish radio, Poland's public broadcaster. And also, that's the reason why I'm here, alumni of Edward Murrow State Department program. Recently, within the last decade, frequent visitor to North Carolina as well, which I fell in love during our wonderful trip in 2010, during the trip of Edward Murrow program. I'm on a daily basis, I'm covering the Middle East, security, and the US as well. So I'll try to put some small input into today's discussion. But of course, that's not me, but our great panelists from my neighborhood countries in Europe are the most important ones. Chris?
Well, I will let the panelists introduce themselves. Gins, do you want to introduce yourself, and then we'll go over to Keith?
Yeah. Hi. Hello. Good. As Wojciech said, good morning, afternoon, or evening here in Latvia, in Riga. I am Gins Samolinch. I am International Affairs Editor, also the public broadcaster of Latvia, working for the public television. I've been covering international affairs for about over a decade. So my daily job involves covering basically everything what's going on around the region, Europe, and the world, whatever happens as an editor of international affairs. So here we are.
Great, thank you. And then Keith?
Hi, Chris. Hi, Wojciech. Hi, Gins. Hi, everyone. I'm Keith Demicoli. I'm from Malta, so it's a small country, a very small island nation between Italy and North of Africa. And I visited North Carolina, the University of North Carolina, with Wojciech and Gins some 11 years ago in November 2010. It was a mind-blowing lifetime experience visiting the campus itself. So I still have vivid memories of the trip. And yeah, since then, I've been working as a public broadcaster, as an anchorman on the main news program. Every single evening, I broadcasted some 6,000 evening news bulletins over the past 14 years. And only 3 months ago, I decided to turn my life upside down, literally. And I moved out of journalism, although I'm still a journalist, and I went to heading the communications and business development department at the Malta Chamber of Commerce, which is a prestigious organization representing, it's more like a lobby, it's representing businesses. However, as we speak, I'm already considering my exit plan, and going back doing something related to media, because ultimately media and being a journalist, it's a vocation, and possibly we can touch on that during our discussion. So I look forward to it this evening.
Great, thank you very much. I don't know about anybody here, but I'm a bit of a visual learner. So I thought the first thing I do is get a map of Europe so we can see where everybody is from, because whilst I'm originally from England, but I live in the United States. But I just wanted to show us where people are. So we have Keith in Malta, which is, maybe people know, thank you very much there for the pointing, kind of down just below Sicily, just below the southern part of Italy. And then we have Gints towards the north in Latvia. Thank you very much there. And then I say from England, but off the map to the west in the United States. And then Wojciech is in Poland. But I just wanted to show this to everybody, just so that we could visualize where everybody is, because it will become important, and it's important to think about the neighbors of the countries that people have. I'd like to kind of start us off by just asking Gints and Keith about the media systems in your country. Keith, maybe we can start with you. Could you just tell us a little bit about the Maltese media system, as in what is the importance of the different television news stations? You said you've done several thousand broadcasts. Is television news the main way people get their news? Are newspapers important? Or what about the radio? Are there podcasts or social media that are important? And a question that I find interesting, coming from the United Kingdom originally, who owns the government in terms of, who owns the media? Is it government run? Are they all privately owned? Is it kind of a public partnership? So if you could just tell us a little bit about that.
Yes, Chris, thank you so much for your question. This is a very intriguing question, and I'm trying to answer it in a very simple way, because it's very complex and complicated. So Malta, notwithstanding having a population of 500,000, it might be beautiful. Having a small country, it's manageable. However, there's a strong political affiliations. So whatever it is, be it media, be it anything, there is a lot of strong political influence. So it's a very polarized, if I can put it that way. So we have two main political parties. Almost the other political parties are irrelevant almost. They get negligible votes. They're not even represented in parliament. So we have the Social Democrats and the Conservative Party, like they are the two main strongholds politically. And we have 4 daily newspapers, 3 in English, actually 2 in English and 2 in Maltese. So our national language is Maltese, but our official languages are both Maltese and English. And you can realize the strong influence that the British brought while they ruled Malta for 164 years. We got our independence only 54 years ago in 1964. When it comes to TV, which is still relatively strong, the public TV is owned by the state, by the government. So there's a huge political influence from the government on who is appointed as the board of management, who is appointed as CEO, who is appointed as head of news, who's heading the newsroom. And of course, it ends up in this political bickering between the two main political parties on being biased, on being objective, on being as impartial as possible. So it's an ongoing saga, an ongoing public discussion when it comes to the public broadcasting services, I guess similar to elsewhere. And then we have a very particular situation, because the other 2 main TV stations in Malta, they're both owned by the political parties themselves, which I guess it's unheard of in anywhere else in the world. So the main two TV stations, One and Net, they're owned by the Labour Party and by the Nationalist Party, the Conservative Party. And they're quite popular, not as popular as the national TV station. And then when it comes to the online media, which is growing in an exponential way, there's still some independence there. But yeah, the media landscape there's a lot of strong political affiliations, and it's always yeah, I hope I managed to come across in a simple way, but it's very complex and it's very complicated, and there's a lot of intricacies involved.
Yes, definitely. It sounds it. And having the television stations owned, or some of them owned by political parties, does seem very interesting. Yeah, unlike many other countries, we would say. Ginz, is that the similar setup for in Poland? Do political parties kind of control television stations? Are there newspapers that come out in any other languages other than Polish? Sorry, Latvia.
Here we go.
Oh dear.
The Europe. So, lots of countries. That's okay. So I guess if Keith started talking about the political landscape, perhaps that kind of influences the media landscape as well, in the sense that Keith talked about that there is basically, well, in fact, two parties who rule Malta, probably exchanging them when they are the helm of the power. And in Latvia, it's a bit different. We have usually several parties who have to find out how to form a coalition. And every new elections, every 4 years, they change their, well, the tendency is that there are new parties created, and they usually get elected as well. So people always expect something to change. Perhaps doesn't really happen every time according to their wishes. But so because of that, I guess perhaps because there are the coalition governments always. Well, the media landscape, well, we have, I would say, two main TV stations here in Latvia, which is a country of 2 million people. So it's the public television, which I'm sitting here right now. And then there's another one owned by Scandinavian media group MTG, which is also present in the other Baltic states and probably in other countries as well. And well, it's hard to say. I wouldn't say that they are in particularly tended to support one party or another openly. So we try to be neutral in the TV, I would say. Although many would disagree, definitely as well. Especially over the past couple of years, over the COVID pandemics, the opinions of people are very strong. Also, when when you report about the pandemics and the government decisions and restrictions and everything, many are dissatisfied with them. So they see, for example, the TV stations as the mouthpieces of the government because of that. So I don't know, could be same thing in other countries as well, probably. It's not to say that we are, but it's just a perception of some who are critical of the situation. There are several smaller TV stations as well, but areas nationwide, there are basically, I would say, two. And of course, there's TV stations we get through the cables, through satellites, and taking into account that there is substantial populations of native Russian speakers in Latvia. The Russian TV channels tend to be popular here as well. And there have been issues with that because of the events in Crimea and Ukraine. And some of those stations have actually been banned in Latvia from the Russian TV stations have been banned under the pretext that they are the mouthpiece of propaganda from the Kremlin trying to influence public opinions in a negative ways here. So those have been, of course, controversial decisions as well, but they have been taken. As for the newspapers, I would say they have been more politically influenced in the sense that you have been able to say, well, that this newspaper is leaning in this political sort of a stream, and this is there, and probably this kind of a rich guy is financing that paper, and so it's peddling its opinions and things like that. Of course, radio stations, I used to work for several years for the public radio here. Also, there is a huge array of radio stations in Latvia, also Russian language stations because of the, although Russian is not official language here, but still, about, I would say, I think about a quarter of people consider themselves native Russian speakers. Well, most of them still speak Latvian as well. And but of course, it's the internet media who are probably people use it more. So also traditional media have to also get more into the things like social media as well, of course, and the Twitter and Facebook and Instagram and TikTok as well to attract younger people. And in recently, there has been talks about the difficulties of media in modern age, as people tend to also get news from, I don't know, Google or Facebook, and especially for the private media, that the money is not really coming in. And some newspapers, but also some traditional news portals on internet, they have made this paywall as well in recent years. And it seems for some of them it's actually working, considering the population size. Probably depends how much you ask for per month or something like that. But it seems people are ready to pay for the news, for quality news as well.
Very interesting. Well, thank you very much for that kind of overview of the media system. Certainly have learned a lot. And it's interesting to see that the dare I say that the distrust of the media is not just, it goes all over the place. But perhaps Wojciech, you can lead the next section and get us thinking about these stories.
I was about to ask, because Gin has mentioned Russia, has mentioned all the historical backgrounds, which are very important here. Guys, I want to ask you about Europe and ask you about the things which are, I guess, obvious for all three of us, at least. But I guess it's worth mentioning and worth explaining also to our viewers from the United States, because I guess the European Union as a body, as a whole, is being considered a whole one single body. While it's very it differs from time to time, from issue to issue, from item to item, and this is one of the main, I guess, main point of discussions within the last 5 or 6 even years. Neighborhood, southern neighborhood towards eastern neighborhood. Gins, he's a guy who is right now in Latvia. He's the guy from the country which borders Russia, same as Poland. Keith is a citizen of a country who is at the southern neighborhood and is facing migrant crisis. Was facing migrant crisis a couple of years ago, when the discussions started. So, what's the perception of in your country? Not even the politicians, not even the media. But let's say the media and the people perception towards Russia and eastern neighborhood, and migrants towards southern neighborhood. What is the essence of this difference? That well, basically, European Union, we might put them we might put the EU countries into the two different groups. The eastern part and the southern part, and that's what many discussions are concentrating from. Ginski, if you could tell us more about why people in Latvia are focused mostly on the Russian threats.
Well, because it's right there across the border, and we've had a long history with let's say Moscow. And of course, over the centuries in Europe, we've liked to, we have had the territory where Latvia is right now. It's been controlled by several regional powers. Germany and Swedes and some Poles as well, some Polish as well. Some areas, but the most recent history is, of course, Russia, Moscow, Russian Empire, and then Soviet Union, and Latvia declared independence in the 1918, so that's more than 100 years ago. But we managed to have that for 20 years only, because in World War II we ended up occupied by the Soviet Union, where we spent 50 years. During which there were people were being sent to Siberia because of wrong political views, because of the collectivization and kolkhoz and everything. So and probably it's rather hard to find a family which in Latvia which has not suffered under the Soviet Moscow's regime and deportations. But so there is this bad taste after the Soviet Union. The empire ambitions. So when the 90s came and we declared independence, and there was in Moscow there was Gorbachev and Boris Yeltsin, the first president of Russia, who were moving on with democratic and liberalization ideas. So we were kind of the same way, on the same wave there. Of course, there were problems and issues, getting rid of the Soviet troops here and things like that, because it's still Moscow, it's still geopolitics, it's still about the influence. So, but then over the past, especially since the War of Georgia in 2009, well, it seems that people realized that, well, these ambitions of Moscow to keep neighbors under its sphere of influence by any means necessary, and even going as far as to, occupying, annexing Crimea, territory of Ukraine, so as to keep its influence. So it's been a wake-up call. Many years ago already said that, well, we are not, that perhaps things will not change that fast in Moscow in terms of having relations on par with its neighbors. So we are, I would say Latvia is quite, I would say people are, I cannot speak for everybody, but say we can be glad that we are part of places like NATO and the European Union, because especially for small countries like ours, like especially Latvia and Malta and others, for us, international organizations, international norms and rule of law it's very important that it persists and it's being taken into account, that it's not just whoever is stronger in terms of military might just takes control, but that there's international platform where everybody can voice their opinions and their interests in par with others. So I hope that explains something, but maybe we'll touch upon this northeastern south divide migration Russia as well, but because we are getting taste of migration right now as well over the past couple of months. So we maybe understand south better now.
And it's very interesting as also there is an issue of migration from the people from Afghanistan, Iraq, but through Belarus. So it's the same kind of problem which is emerging in Poland. But let's jump to Malta, Keith. We can all be aware of that. Well, of course, migrants were heading towards Malta as well. So this is the kind of domestic problem. But let's go a bit deeper than just, of course, telling the viewers that Malta was one of the countries which was mostly affected by migrant crisis. Why Malta? I mean, I wanted to ask about the cultural ties with the southern neighborhood of Malta, with North Africa or even the Middle East. Is it playing a role as well in the migrant crisis, in Malta's attitude on the stage of EU or NATO in terms of well, the current affairs?
Keith, we can't hear you.
Thank you so much, Wojciech, and sorry for that. So I have to make it clear from the outset that Malta is not a member of NATO just because in its constitution it declared that Malta is a neutral country. I know neutrality might be perceived differently from different people, but Malta had declared that it will seek its role in the middle of the Mediterranean and throughout history, if I may, to remain like a peacemaker, both between Europe and North Africa, and even between East and West Europe. So even like when Bush and Gorbachev had met, and unofficially they ended the Cold War in 1989, they had decided, it was, if not mistaken, I was only 6 at the time, but I vividly remember it. It was a terrible thunderstorm. It was December of 1989. And they precisely chose Malta because it had no ties with any superpower or any other country. This might be an advantage and a disadvantage, even when it comes to migration, because Malta joined the European Union in 2004, uh, precisely to be part of stronger allies, to be part of the club of UK, Germany, France, Italy, Spain, all these superpowers. And over the past few years, it realized that given its size, given its population, it's a mammoth task to take your priorities, your agenda to the European Union table and convince all the other 26 partners that migration, for instance, there should be more solidarity there, and there should be all other member states should take literally migrants from Malta in their countries. So that is precisely what Malta was trying to convince all the other European partners over the past few years, trying to instill this value of solidarity, because Malta's arguing that given its geographical position close to Libya, from where most of the migrants start their journey, in in view of a better future in Europe, of course, most of them, they have to be rescued by the Maltese authorities at times, or Italian authorities. So trying to answer your question, if Malta is trying to seek more collaboration between its southern European partners, I would say there is a sort of coalition like the Visegrad, for those who are not acquainted with all these terms. So the Visegrad is the coalition of Eastern European states, while the Southern Coalition, there's Portugal, Spain, Italy, Greece, Cyprus. They joined forces because they have similar issues and they try to address these issues and try to go to the European Union with a stronger voice, if I may put it that way. But migration remains an issue because Malta has still one of the highest numbers of refugees per capita, not only in Europe, but worldwide. And of course, given the size of the country, I give you a quick trivia here, but the size of Malta is 31,000 smaller than the United States. So the size of Malta is extremely small. And you need infrastructure for all these migrants, desperate migrants, which me personally, I truly relate to the stories and the incredible, terrible experiences of these migrants trying just to pursue a better future. So when it comes to Europe, Maltese are a bit disillusioned with the European project. And that's why possibly over the past few years, the Maltese authorities were seeking unilaterally trying to seek other partners outside of Europe, such as China, Azerbaijan, Russia, which are not exactly the best partners to brush shoulders with, or possibly they're not perceived as such. But it is possibly due to the fact that the Maltese people were a bit, and the Maltese government, they were a bit like utterly disappointed with the forthcoming response from the European Union.
If I may add one just thing, because I can see on the chat there is also a question on what's your take, Keith, on the media coverage or migration across the Mediterranean Sea. Your take on the media, both in Malta but also in Europe. How do you see that in terms of the media, in terms of the journalistic approach?
Yeah, the journalistic approach, of course, I fully understand. I worked in the media and I'm still working in the media. I'm sometimes corresponding with Euronews. And I fully understand that their main correspondents, their main crew is usually situated in Italy, in Greece, and not exactly in Cyprus or in Malta, where most of the migrants are landing first in Europe. It is possibly because showcasing or being in Italy or in Greece, for instance, you might get more visuals, you might reach more bigger audiences, because we're talking about a competitive industry here. Media is still a competitive industry, even though there's this moral obligation of broadcasting and communicating the truth. But nevertheless, it's still a competitive industry. So they follow numbers. And most of the time, I guess, they do not expose truly the reality of the migration situation in Malta, in the Mediterranean, even more this route between Libya and Malta, and of course Italy, or elsewhere, from Morocco to Spain or from Libya to Spain. So I'm a bit critical of the media coverage worldwide. There has to be an extraordinary images of migrants who are dying, drowning in the sea, which sometimes they truly go viral. And we had some terrible stories. I covered some of them. They're truly humanely depressing and graphic images of people literally drowning, migrants drowning in the Mediterranean, which some observers say it has turned to be a cemetery for these migrants. The Mediterranean Sea has become a cemetery for migrants who are simply trying to start a new life.
So concluding the Europe parts, I would like to guys to just quickly ask you about the way European Union works in your countries. So let's imagine that let's make a very straightforward comparison to the United States, which is not, of course, not a correct comparison, but just to have a clear vision for the viewers in the United States. So let's for a while think that all of the United States, all of the states from the US has just one single vote. Well, let's say just like in the U.S. Senate, so the number of votes is equal. However, there's no partisan lines between the Republicans, Democrats, between different fractions in the U.S. But let's imagine that every state has just one vote, as it is just in the European Council, the main body which is responsible for the decision in the EU. You are guys both from the small countries, not from Germany, not from France, so not from the countries which are described or concerned as the most influential in the European Union. And as we all know, the decisions which are being taken by the European Union are the decision which has to be unilateral. So there is always on the European Union behind the scenes, there is always this kind of bargaining between different countries. How your country is trying to influence other bigger players on the European stage to get them their own agenda, for example. Gint.
Well, I think, well, as you said, yes, there's 27 member states as of right now, since a year or so. Well, I would say we tend to try to find like-minded countries, which are also, well, small as we are, and to make groupings with, it depends by the topic and the issue discussed, but then you kind of group together to make more influence. Say the Baltic states, it's Latvia. Can you hear me well? By the way, I saw there was a comment about the mic. So the Baltic states, Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania, the three of us, we kind of tend to have a similar interests where we need to, which we want to reach. For example, the funds, the EU funds, the funding for agriculture and so on, and cohesion and such. Also, the Northern Europe states, we tend to sign usually before the council meetings, before the heads of state meet in Brussels to discuss things. Well, these the Baltic and the Nordic states tend to have a meeting before that meeting on their own to discuss the forthcoming issues on the table. And I would suppose Visegrad does the same. Not sure about Malta actually. So it's if you have a like-minded, but I would say that's the way. Of course, you can use the veto power. Usually there are decisions that has to be unanimous between the 27 states very often, and one country can just derail all of it. So hence the discussions behind the scenes. But I mean, we are too small to try to jump out like that, I would say. So it's usually like that, I would say. We try to, there are other countries who have similar interests as we have, so we group together, and so we discuss from those positions. I would say that's my reading.
Keith, but what about Malta? What's the way Maltese governments, different parties, governments throughout these years that you are a frequent guest at the European Union summits. So what's the way the smallest country in the EU, as you've been frequently saying, is trying to influence the bigger players? Also on the not on the political issues as well, but for the issues which are important to the people of your country, like budget, like finances, like whatever that on the everyday life you and other Maltese could just feel from the European Union.
So I'll make this clear. I'm personally biased to answer this question because I am strongly pro-European. So, and when I am strongly pro-European, I'm just fascinated by the idea of bringing together different member states, different countries, different people, different cultures as one. And while respecting their diversity, because that's the amazing thing about the European Union. They're all different. Latvians are different from the Maltese. So their cuisine is completely different from ours, but we're still partners in this project. And that's what the amazing thing about the European Union, which was still a myth, was still a dream until 15, 20 years ago, at least for me and for Ginz, because we weren't part of this exclusive club, which from 6 member states became 28 and now 27, of course, with Brexit. So it is, I have to be honest, however, that it is a mammoth task to convince other European partners that if you have a problem, they should shoulder responsibility and support you in your problem. I'll just give a quick example with Libya once again. For Maltese, Libya is a top political priority, both foreign-wise, internationally, because of our geolocation, because we're closer to Libya than we are from Latvia. So, but when the Maltese politicians go to Brussels and try to convince their European partners that Libya should go up in the foreign policy priorities, it's not received the same way because they're not being impacted by the migration challenges. I wouldn't call it problem, migration challenges such as the Maltese are. So it's hard to relate to the problem if you're not impacted personally. So it's a bit, I would say we're too small to make a huge impact, even though now as we speak, Malta is lobbying to take on a seat as one of the 10 rotating members on the UN Security Council in 2023-2024. We had only the seat.
Latvia as well.
Even Latvia, that's news, that's amazing. So we still try to...
We'll be on the same council.
That's fantastic to hear. So we still try to make an effort to be in these prestigious international fora. But if you had to ask me, are you making a significant impact? I would say we have an attitude of trying to make an impact in a diplomatic way and over time. So climate change, the first politician that mentioned climate change internationally was a Maltese politician in his UN address in 1988. So that was the very first time climate change was mentioned because Maltese people were already being impacted by climate change back then. And he had this foresight that climate change would be an international challenge over time. And he was proven somehow right. So when you have these small nations such as Malta, Latvia, they can bring to the table perspectives which you might not consider or other bigger countries might not be aware of. So that's my perception. And if they're making an impact, that's a completely different story.
So guys, let's hope that you would all meet in the in New York City when there will be the UN Security Council meeting. Both as a journalist, Keith, as you've told us, you are returning to your roots. Chris, so if we are coming back to the US, so back to you.
Thank you. Yes, I was interested to learn a little bit about a news story or something interesting. You mentioned both Keith and Gens that your country is quite small. Is there a news story that you think that people in the United States should be aware of that has happened in your country? Maybe something that has not made it far, but is really important. Keith, unfortunately, the only one I really know in Malta is about Daphne Caruana Galizia, who was a journalist. But I don't know if you could just kind of give us a short summary of something that is interesting that you think we should know about the Maltese news.
Yeah, about the Maltese news, there's a lot of things which I can share with you about Malta in particular. But about Daphne Caruana Galizia, because she became an international icon, if I can put it that way, when it comes to investigative journalism, because she had this amazing, outstanding skill of trying to pursue investigative journalism. And if you going back to what I said earlier during my introduction, in Malta, we have strong political affiliations. So everyone is strongly linked. There's this myth. Some tourists and visitors, when they come to Malta, they think that all Maltese know each other because it's only 500,000 people living in Malta. So there's a joke that foreigners think that everyone knows everyone. Although it's almost close enough, but it's not completely true. And when it comes to Daphne Caruana Galizia, I personally, the most fascinating thing about Daphne is that notwithstanding this polarized situation in Malta and these strong links between everyone, she still exposed head-on corruption, bribery, unethical political business, notwithstanding the context she was working in. So she was almost a one-person show, unlike me having worked in a newsroom with 12 other colleagues, a TV station of 100 or so people. She ran her blog by herself, and she did all the dirty work by herself. And if she had the lead, she would follow it up until the very end. And possibly that's what we're realizing now. That's why she was killed, because she had this leak received by email. She was trying to uncover the strong political relations between the business community and the policymakers, and they were closely linked together, and they were doing shady business, not in the interest of the Maltese people. And that's possibly why she was killed. And there's all this talk, there's the proceedings in court as we speak. But this week we had another breakthrough, because the business guy who was perceived, who was involved, allegedly involved, he is under indictment now. So officially he's going to be prosecuted for being part in her assassination. So it's been 200 weeks since Daphne Caruana Galizia was assassinated. And I guess everyone now vividly remembers that particular day, that particular moment where he was, such as when they ask you where you were when Barack Obama was elected, or when Donald Trump was elected, or another milestone moment.
Yes.
Now we're trying to figure out where we were at that particular moment, October of 2017. And since then, she remained in the news even more than ever before. And it exposed not only a problem in Malta, but a problem internationally, the close links and how you make a distinction between politics and business. And it's been one interesting journey. Regrettably, it had a person had to be paid by the life of a person, but on the positive side of it, at least, we're now realizing how scary it was and how scary it might be in other countries as well. We had an assassination of an investigative journalist in the Netherlands just a couple of weeks ago. And of course, these were unheard of until recently, of a journalist being killed because of his work in Europe. And
Yeah,
now so yeah, it is a bit like scary. The only time I spoke to Daphne, if I may, on a personal basis, I was co-opted on the National Institute representing the journalist lobby, and I was representing the youth journalists, so the young journalists, the young video makers, the young media enthusiasts. And she was calling me, I don't know who to call. I'm Daphne. It was like 15 years ago, but I guess you should have some, I will not use her words, but you should have some guts to issue a statement criticizing the authorities for taking a particular stand. So that was the only time I spoke to her over the phone. Of course, I met her occasionally in social events, but yeah, otherwise, it's still vividly every day we still hear about Daphne Caruana Galizia and something she uncovered over the years.
Yeah, thank you. That's very interesting. Yes, I'm just going to pop her name in the chat so that people can learn a little bit more about her. But that is a fascinating, very sad ending story, but shows the importance of investigative journalism and working to expose what goes on behind the scenes. Gints, is there anything similar to that in Latvia, or is there another story that was interesting or important you think we should learn about?
Well, in those terms, about Daphne and what Keith was talking about, of course, well, there have been over the years some attacks on the journalists here, but I don't, in my memory, there's nothing has been, that somebody has been killed, but I know a few years ago there was somebody was beaten up. That was a long time ago. I guess these days, well, journalists mostly receive abuse online very much on Facebook and Twitter and whatnot, especially as the pandemic goes on and media in such distrust. In terms of particular news story in Latvia, well, I was thinking it was hard to pinpoint something relatively recent because, well, it's also, pandemics and COVID and everything's kind of still orbiting all of that. One was the thing, well, it's also connected with the COVID and all the virtual reality things that it has made more popular and possible, and it has made some things actually better, perhaps, because, well, I don't know if there would be this Zoom meeting without pandemics, or would it be? I don't know, but I think it has really brought in this, popularized, made more a household thing to have all these kind of virtual meetings and discussions, and I think that's a great thing, and I hope that's gonna stay after all of this is over, because obviously people will start to travel more and meet in person, so this might become more difficult. But then we also had this summer in Latvia and also in Estonia, we have this every 4 years we have this singing and dancing festival, which dates back about 150 years or so. It's basically when every 4 years, like Olympics, people come together from all of Latvia in the stadiums. There's huge choirs with thousands of people singing, songs, and there's this huge dancing spectacles and everything. It's a huge festival, and it kind of played important role in establishing independence of Latvia. You know, we had these singing revolutions as well, and fighting through the songs and singing and such. And every 4 years, we also have in between these youth singing and dancing festival, where basically it's the school children and students, they do the same thing, but on a smaller scale. And so this happened this summer. And I understand it's still ongoing, but because of the COVID, it's sadly all kind of a virtual. So I think personally, it's been I'd love to do it like that virtually. It doesn't work. It just doesn't work. So I hope next year there's going to be the big one again. So I hope it's going to be over and
yeah,
that's
we'll
a
have
huge
to look
thing
out for
here.
that. Yeah, that sounds like
Yeah,
a really
and
interesting...
Estonians do the same thing. It's something very connected with the roots of independence as well.
Okay, well,
came to be.
Thank you. That's very interesting to learn a little bit about the kind of the cultural information, the kind of the stories that go on there. I'm gonna turn to Wojciech to ask him a little bit about, if we can discuss a bit about Afghanistan, and then we've got a question from, I think, Frank, that we're going to talk about with Belarus. But Wojciech, can I hand it over to you for a moment?
Sure. So a couple of very quick thoughts about Afghanistan from me as a person who has been there for several times during the last 15 years actually. Yeah, so it's of course it's very sad what is happening there, and of course, well, it's easy to blame one person for that, but that's the very complex issue. My impression is that unfortunately the West didn't understand Afghanistan through all of these years, because the mistakes which are now being made by the international community, not only by the US, but also on the NATO as a whole, as an international community, as the UN, etc., etc. These are mistakes which were totally avoidable. However, well, this is the story which we are facing right now. So unfortunately, I'm very sad and very heartbroken about what is happening there in Afghanistan, especially that I have my friends and colleagues there as well. Some of them were successfully evacuated from Afghanistan, as they were under threat from Taliban. Well, the Taliban will not change for me. Anticipating some of the question which might appear, so they are simply waiting for international recognition, and then they will, I guess, return to their old habit, and maybe not so dramatical as in the 20th century, at the end of 20th century, but in terms of the women's rights, in terms of the media freedom, freedom of speech and freedom of media, well, I don't have a doubt that there won't be such a thing as a freedom of women, speech, media, etc. But also turning to you guys, because you are the main persons on this meeting. Keith, you've mentioned that Malta is not a NATO member country, so you were not involved in Afghanistan militarily. Gint, you were. I also remember a couple of meetings with the Latvian soldiers there in Afghanistan, in Kabul or other places. So, what's your perception in your country, your personal take, but also perception in your country in terms of, well, alliance with the US, because I guess this is the issue which would be very interesting also to our viewers from the US.
Well, of course, well, Latvia participated, I think, with 2,500 soldiers over the years in Afghanistan, in several missions altogether, and several lost their lives as well. And we started the mission in 2003. In Afghanistan, and that was a year before we joined NATO. And I think, well, from Latvian perspective, so almost 20 years ago, it was important for us to be in Afghanistan, also from the point of view to show that we are partners with the Western countries in those efforts, with the United States. so as to have an allies, to show that we are an ally. And I think, I mean, Georgia, for example, they had mission there as well, although they're not NATO member states. So I think that's also about forging alliances and having the allies in the West. And yes, as Wojciech said, it's a sad situation in Afghanistan. We are to take in, I think somehow already arrived, some Afghans, the asylum seekers who helped Latvians there, interpreters and such. All of the countries in Europe are doing that right now, also in Poland. And yeah, and today I read that, you know, the Taliban, the spokesman, he said in the New York Times interview that, you know, the Western music is going to be banned when they come to power. So I think that says a lot about what's going to happen in Afghanistan. Then again, I don't know. I mean, there's Iran, there's Saudi Arabia, for example, where I wouldn't say that, well, women's rights are in great shape either, but still, you know, it's a I say most important ally for the United States, let's say in the Middle East. So it's very much about the influence of the country as well. Well, in terms of Afghanistan, I think well, Russia and China will try to, especially China will try to move in and, you know, kind of fill that vacuum once Taliban takes hold. It's going to be hard for them as well, I would say. I think there's, you know, Afghanistan, it's several factions. So there's, you know, vying for control from different warlords as well. There's Panjshir Valley, where there's still some resistance holding on. We had this attack yesterday near airport by the ISIS in Afghanistan. So it's going to be tough. So I think that's going to be tough for the regular people, but also, you know, in terms of stability for Afghanistan, it's going to, even if Taliban is in power, it's not like they're going to, you know, that's going to be orderly under iron fist for them either. No, I mean, there's going to be changes in the region very much, especially China. I mean, China will going to move in and say, hey, no strings attached on human rights or anything. Let's just cooperate. There's also some mining possibilities for, I know, rare earth, I think, also in Afghanistan.
It sounds like we should watch this space then as to what's going to happen. There's a lot going on. I just want to get to a quick question that came in from Frank Laney. He says, thoughts on Belarus and its future? I don't necessarily know if there's anything particular that is going on in Belarus at the moment, but Gints or Keith, do you have any thoughts on that, on Belarus and what's going to be happening there?
If I can quickly share my personal thoughts and what I think about both Afghanistan and Belarus, it's precisely the influence of media on such situations, because up until a year ago, when there were the Belarusian elections, it was all over the news. Everywhere in Europe, they were saying, we have the last dictator in Europe, referring to Lukashenko, and there seems to be an upsurge, a movement of ousting Lukashenko. But as soon as those images on our TVs and on our online portals faded, naturally, because people were fed up, possibly fed up with listening over and over again with what's happening, the protests in Belarus and elsewhere in Europe, the issue just faded away. And Lukashenko, it's been a year since his elections, and the situation in Belarus hasn't changed since then. The people there are still politically repressed. Lukashenko, I believe, is still doing his secretive autocratic dealings. And what the Belarusians want is simply what the Afghans want, a government that is truly honest and accountable, and a system that is based on the rule of law, which is definitely not the case, at least from the reports we're getting from Belarus, and definitely not the case in Afghanistan. So although there are different perspectives and different situations, in my view, the media plays a critical role in trying to create more awareness in a tangible way, in an engaging way, to captivate the audience, So the audience creates this natural movement of convincing the European Union and other powers, international organizations such as the United Nations as well, to do really something about it, but something tangible that the people in these countries truly deserve. So my impression is that, okay, now we're talking about Afghanistan, but possibly in a month's time, it might be Libya, it might be somewhere else. Up until it's in the news, everyone is interested. When it fades away, there's complete uninterest from everyone, from the policymakers and from decision makers as well.
So thank you. That sounds like almost a perfect way to come up with a conclusion, a summary of this. Like, it seems like journalists and the media have the power to inform everybody, let us know what is going on, and help keep these really important issues in our minds and to the fore, and to not shy away from the reality as troubling and as hard as it is. Keith and Gintz, you two have done so much reporting over there, and Wojciech as well has done these kinds of things. I want to thank you all for this, participating. This is very interesting discussion, and I certainly learned a lot about what has been going on, and learning about the media systems in your countries. I want to thank Wojciech for co-moderating, co-hosting this with me. So Gintz and Macaulay, thank you. I need to just also thank International Focus for helping us put this on, or putting this on, I should say. And if you want to become a member of International Focus, you can check out on their website. I'm going to pop it into the chat now. Through the beauty of Zoom, unfortunately, as Gintz was saying, COVID has led to many things, but it has allowed me to say things like putting things into the chat, which I now know is how to do. So if you want to get involved, please do that. And if you would like to sponsor an event or a program, you can contact Layla Bekri. She is the Executive Director at International Focus. And there are a couple of things that are coming up. One that I am hopefully going to be moderating, depending on how my performance has been viewed this time. That'll be on Friday, September 24th at 12 p.m. And then we are going to be hopefully doing an in-person social on October 14th at 6:30 p.m. Wojciech, is there anything else you would like to add or say?
Well, from my perspective, if I would have the right to vote, I would vote. I would vote for you, Chris, to be the moderator. So, if I may, just influence our audience a bit. But yeah, thank you very much, guys. It was a pleasure to be for the second time. This time as a co-host, and I hope that that your brilliant thoughts are making a difference and. Make us as a neighbors. The US and the Europe as a whole better understand each other. So in these turbulent times, I guess it's much more important than it was appearing some years ago. So let's keep that work to better understand each other.
Thanks, Voy. Thanks, Chris and Gintz and everyone. It was a pleasure, and thanks for having me, honestly. And it was great. And hopefully one day, some of the attendees, Chris and Voy and Gintz, maybe we cross paths again in Europe, and possibly, why not, in North Carolina as well.
North Carolina it is.
Yes, who knows? Keith mentioned, yeah, thank you. Well, it was great meeting you, Keith, again, and Wojciech, and getting to know Chris was great, and great discussion, great exchange between the South and the North and Central Europe and United States and Britain. And yes, and hopefully we'll maybe see each other in somewhere around, maybe North Carolina. I actually brought, for 10 years ago, I still have this, which was, I hope that's the right university still, right?
Yes, that is. Yeah, Tar Heels.
Yeah.
Yes, that is.
Used a bit, so the discussion reminded me of getting this out of the.
Wow. Yes, the blue there, and also the blue I have as my background is they call it and actually your shirt as well, Gins,
yeah,
as well.
that's
And
as
Keith,
well.
maybe it's your shirt as well.
For UNC.
Yeah,
Yes, I still,
and which as well.
yes, I still have my shirt from the UNC.
Yeah.
Very proud of it. Very, very proud of it.
Me too. I have to say it's in the wardrobe, which is very close to
Yeah.
There is a and not just a shirt or jacket. The memories.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Well, hopefully we can make more memories of coming to North Carolina in the future. And in fact, one of the questions has come in by Chukwumeka. Maybe they said, "Well, I love that ball. Would you mind playing in Africa, Gintz? Maybe you can take the American football over to." And actually, I believe the next International Focus Global Dialogue will be hopefully featuring a couple of people from Africa. So we will watch this space. Maybe we can take that over there then. A global tour of a British person who lives in the United States but does not understand American football can maybe be taught by someone who does.
That's a great ball to throw around. Go Tar Heels, right?
Exactly. Okay. Well, we'll finish up there. So thank you very much to panelists. Thank you very much to the audience. Really appreciated learning from you and hearing about your experiences. Thank you very much. And everybody enjoy your evening, morning, afternoon, weekend, whatever time of day, whatever time of day is for you. Thank you very much, everybody, and goodbye.
Thank you.